All right, we're live, and thanks for tuning in to this special edition of Growth Amplifiers. We're going to be doing something a little bit fun today, as we're going to be versus each other. Fatality. My name is Kenny Harper, and my business partner, Manny Torres, is going to be versing me in this wonderful debate on which is better, the one thing or the 10x rule. And actually, we're really kind of debating which strategy is better, creating really large strategic plans or really focused strategic plans. Is more, or is less more? That is the conversation. So, Manny, thanks for tuning in and debating this with me today.
I'm excited. Hopefully, I won't have an issue like Conor McGregor had this past weekend. I hope you didn't see that. That was kind of gruesome, but excited about squaring off with you today about this little debate.
Yeah, it's pretty cool too, because full disclaimer, we're both fans of both these concepts in books. So we're going to be taking a stance for the sake of the debate, but we're actually fans of both of these concepts. So if you're wondering, why we would choose one over the other, it's only because we need to choose something to have a debate. So without further ado, let's let me bring up this too. So Growth Amplifiers, we interview thought leaders from around the country, and this could be people that have a book or a community or a business, and they have knowledge, attitude, and expertise that they can contribute to others who are looking to amplify their business. And recently we had Jeff Woods, who is the president of the One Thing community, guest on our show. And that's kind of one of the things that really spurred this topic. And just wanted to share that if you're looking for an inspirational podcast topic, that was a really great session. Jeff was on that session. There he is right there. And he really had a meaningful inspiration. He shared some great tips for application, and as well as some good behind the scenes of how he kicked off that group. It's really, really cool how he connected with Gary Keller and launched that group. So if you want to hear that, you can go to growthamplifiers.com and tune into the podcast channel that best fits your perspective, the one that works best for you. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get into this debate. Hopefully everything comes across as expected. I think it might look a little weird, but we'll make it work. Okay, so how's this going to get brought in? All right, no, that's pretty good. All right, Manny, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's get it on. So again, this is strategic planning. Is more, is less more, whichever works for you. That's to decide. But now we're going to go ahead and go over some key concepts. And we're going to start off with Mr. Manny Torres sharing some key concepts of the 10X rule.
Right. So starting off with number one on the 10X rule is that most people don't set their goals high enough. A lot of times there's different reasons why that may happen. Maybe they're scared that they won't be able to achieve it. Maybe they just want to make it easy so that they can check it off their list. But the problem with that is if you don't set big enough goals, you're not going to have that inspiration, that passion to get them done. And you're really not going to strive to do those every single day. And we all know that for big goals to be successful in life, you got to be taking consistent action to make that happen. Number two, the level.
One second, Mr. Manny. Just on that topic right there, most people don't set big enough goals, and just to weigh in on that topic for a moment, they don't set big enough goals. But I've seen sometimes on the other hand where people set too big goals, right? They set goals that are so big, so lofty, they couldn't even possibly achieve them. And so if people are setting these huge, amazing goals, but then they're not even potentially able to achieve them, then that can demoralize someone towards achieving their goals. So while I think it's important to shoot a big goal, there's also the counter to that, which is why we're versing.
Sure.
All right. So number two, Manny, tell me your number two.
All right. So number two is kind of ties into what you were just saying, but you need to have a level and effort that's going to be higher than what most people tend to have to achieve those goals. So a lot of times people have a lofty goal that they're looking to achieve, but they don't realize the amount of work and effort and mindset that needs to happen in order to make that come to fruition.
Right. So they basically need to come at it full throttle, 10x that mindset to just really crush it. On the counter to that, sometimes if you're coming at things and you've got to come in full throttle, if you're not conditioned to do that, like running a marathon, if you just start, I'm going to run a marathon today, it could be really taxing on you, right? So it can actually have an adverse effect of weighing you down if you're trying to do too much in such a short time frame. All right, Manny, let me continue knocking down your points.
So number three is the biggest challenge most businesses face is that they are obscure. So a lot of businesses want to feel like, that they just need to get their referrals in. If they do a great job in the work that they do, that the business will naturally come. But the truth is, a lot of people don't even know about these businesses. And without them increasing their activity, 10xing what they're doing, they're not going to be seen by any of their prospective clients, and they won't get that visibility that's really needed to help their business grow and scale.
So, so they really need to get some traction. They need to get some focus. And how's the 10x rule helping them out in that area? Just if you could weigh in on that so I could chop it down.
Sure. Well, a lot of business owners feel like if they do a little bit of marketing that people are going to see them, or they assume that if they just do a good job. But if they don't 10x the amount of effort that they're doing to get their name, their brand, their image out there, they're not going to be seen. And you don't want to just be a competitor in your market. You want to dominate that market, because we all know the 80-20 rule, where those top few businesses get the majority of that visibility. So you don't want to be one that's stuck in the middle of the pack. You want to be the one leading the pack.
Got it. So, and I'll give you some credit there, Manny. I'll give you some credit that, if you're going to be on, for instance, a social media platform, right? You don't want to try to do a little bit on everything. How many social media accounts do we see where there's posts, very little views, no engagement? And you're wondering, well, if you post in a cave, does anyone see it, right? Now, on the counter to that, right, is some people may say, well, if I can't 10x it, then I'm just not going to even get started. And so that's where I would counter and say, if sometimes you can't 10x it right out the gate, sometimes you do need to just get started on something and build that cadence, that repetition, and then build it through time. So that was a kind of like just an overview of the 10x rule, some key concepts there, and also some counter concepts. Do you have anything you'd want to weigh in on from anything that I've shared thus far?
I think that some of the common challenges that you're putting up there all tend to tie into a little bit of fear. And I think a lot of times people that say they can't do things, it's their fear that's speaking first. And it's not that they can't do it. They're just not willing to take that first step and get into it. And once they do get into it, a lot of times they realize it's not as big of an ordeal as they thought it would be, and they can actually make traction and do a lot more than they thought they could. So if you can open up your mindset, get past those first barriers, you're going to be able to go a lot further.
Excellent. Thank you, Manny, for making that point. We're now going to turn the page to the overview of the one thing. The one thing where less can be more. Now, one concept here that I'll bring out is that not everything is equal. People look at their day, and quite frankly, there's going to be more things on your to-do list than you can ever fully achieve. There's just more ideas that could be done, more things that you can put time and attention to, and not everything is equal. So you've really got to identify and determine what has the biggest impact? Where do you really need to put your time? Because if you can focus on knocking out the actions that are going to have the biggest impact, then that would make sure that you're putting the time on the areas that will have the biggest impact. It's kind of counterintuitive sometimes when people say they don't have enough time to do everything. But if you focus on the most important thing, you have enough time to do that, right? So Manny, that's point number one. Now, how can you counter that? I don't think you can, but go ahead, try, Manny.
Sure. Now, not everything's going to be equal, but sometimes you're going to have to test and measure to see which ones have the most traction. And if you don't have more repetition on those items that you're testing, there's no way to know which one's an actual winner. So sometimes you have to ramp up different items that you're doing to see which one actually is more important. Because a lot of times what we think is going to be the one that's going to have the most leverage doesn't tend to be the one that actually does. Touche,
my friend. Well played. And we see that all the time with sometimes, the businesses or the owners or the teams that we're working with, when they're trying to double down on a strategy because that's where they put their focus, but they haven't taken the step back to really see, is that the best focus in the first place? So, and are they testing other things that could be getting better? So that was a very good point, and I'm going to quit arguing your side now and go to step number 2. So the multitasking myth. Now, this is kind of becoming more and more common knowledge at this point that multitasking is not something that's good for productivity. We think, if I'm doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and trying to diversify and get so many different things. Maybe we're trying to do 10 different things at the same time. That's really hard to build momentum. It's really hard to make sure things are being done efficiently and effectively. And so the thought here is, if you're trying to do a lot of things, but you're really not making progress in any of them, are you really making progress? Or if you really put focus on one rock at a time, one goal at a time, one initiative at a time to achieve it, then you could make more progress moving everything else down the line. All right, Manny, you're up.
So this one's a little bit tougher to compete against, but one of the things that we all know is that as human beings, we can't stay focused and be a productive work for 8 hours a day. So we know that there's going to be big chunks where your mind's just not going to be there. So during those times, it may be helpful for you to bounce around back and forth, because it'll help you stay stimulated a little bit more versus having to sit down for an hour and a half to work on one task. So maybe during those shorter spans are some times that you could test out some new things where you can do a little bit at a time, so that you're not taking away the big chunks and you're not distracting yourself, but you could try some different avenues to see if you get any traction.
Okay, I'll give you that. By the way, I'm chatting in our URL, growthamplifiers.com. It's our podcast. And if you want to tune into future podcasts, go to growthamplifiers.com/live. We have some interactivity that we're planning on ramping up our community. I'm going to go to point number 3, right? So this is think big, but start small. I have this little analogy sometimes I'll share with either clients or sometimes in speaking engagements. I'll ask the question. I'm going to ask you right now. How many doghouses do you need to build in order to build a skyscraper?
It's probably going to be a lot.
It's actually a trick question. And I don't even think I set it up correctly. So in order to know how to build a skyscraper, to learn how to build a skyscraper, it's actually 0, because you don't learn really how to build a skyscraper regardless of how many doghouses you build. And the point is, if you're looking to build something big, you need to think big and start planning big, right? But then what tends to happen is people see, we need to do all these things. We need to have all these blueprints and the schematics and the engineering and the electric and the plumbing and all these safety regulations, and they get overwhelmed and then they're not taking any action to get anything moving forward. So we've got to have the big vision. We got to think big, but then start small. We don't need to do everything at once. I don't think there's a person that has ever by themselves built a skyscraper. We think big. We start small, focusing on one thing at a time. Maybe that's just the plan. And then what's the next step? Inch by inch, you make progress. Batter's up, Manny.
So the challenge with that is if you start so small, it takes too long to gain any traction. And we all know that a lot of times timing's the biggest thing. And if you can't get some traction early on, you may miss that window of time to actually hit the market or get the input from your audience to see if it's working. So by doing some sprints where you're getting a ton of work done, you're moving the project forward, you're getting some response back, you can actually get that input that you need to see if it's working so that you can re-energize yourself for the next sprint. So sometimes if you do too little, you're never going to know if it's going to be successful.
Well played, sir. Well played. So now we're wrapping the overview of the one thing. Now, we at Growth Amplifiers, we always want to leave with actionable takeaways. So we've got some actual takeaways that we're going to go over real quick. And if you're looking for the actionable takeaway from the 10X rule, Manny, what could people do as a good first step towards starting to apply the concepts from the 10X rule by Grant Cardone?
All right. So as a listener of this podcast, I'm sure that you have goals written out. You got a smart format goals. If you don't, you should make sure that you get those first and foremost. But one thing you can do is go ahead and say, what's going to happen if I 10X my goal and the actions that I need to take to accomplish that. Start to imagine, as Kenny mentioned before, something huge, something big, something meaningful for you and the impact it can have on the people that you serve.
Excellent. So think about that key action. I'll put it on screen real quick. 10X your goals and the actions you plan to take to achieve them. So it's a great action. And, it's just making sure that you're putting enough effort in the right area to actually get results. And I think that is a good takeaway. All right. So the action step from the one thing is starting off by asking the focusing question. This focusing question helps you determine where's the best place to start. The focusing question is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So this takes a little bit of time to take a step back and really start prioritizing. What's one thing that I could do that would make everything else a little easier or unnecessary? And far too often we can get so caught up in doing things that we don't take the time to step back and really look at what would be the best thing to do. So this is just that fresh reminder to do this. And it's helpful to do on a regular basis because things change, and sometimes the priority and the things that's going to have the most impact is going to be different. All right. So we're now into the final part of this debate. And Manny Torres is representing the 10X rule. I am representing the one thing. And we're going to be kind of going through each little section and determining a winner for each. All right. So we're going to start off with the concept name. Now, I've been talking about the one thing, and I've been continually using it in even prepping for today's show. The one thing I need to do today, the one thing that's the most important. So it's a pretty powerful name. Manny, what is your counter?
So the 10X rule it's just got power to it, because if you think about multiplying your results and multiplying what you're able to do, it just seems like it makes everything, bigger, more possible, and a greater result in the end.
You'd expect something as powerful from Mr. Grant Cardone. And I know Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, the one thing is such a powerful concept. But I think I could tend to agree with you, Manny, that the 10x rule, it's a little bit different. It's not something you'd say in everyday speak. So it does have a little bit more power. And so we'll give that round to the 10x rule. Good job, Manny. Now, the support community. Well, when I was doing my interview with Jeff Woods on the Growth Amplifiers podcast, we talked about his community that he built for the one thing, and how he gets people from all over the world to come together and support each other with implementing their strategies and building these habits and actually getting and achieving things that are important to them. And so that's really impactful. It's not what you know, it's what you do, and it's more important the results you get. What is your counter on the matter?
So for 10X in true Grant Cardone fashion, his community is really set on large events where he brings a ton of people together. There's a lot of energy and excitement, and you're able to come in and see what's possible by seeing all the great things that other people are doing to 10X their life and their business.
So those sound really exciting and probably transformational. But would you agree that maybe having a community that has ongoing relationships and really supports each other may give the one thing a bit of an edge?
Yeah, I could definitely see that because as you can imagine, the 10X rule can be exhausting. And if you don't have that support system there to re-energize you, you could definitely start to lose traction.
So now we're at a tie. But I think I'm going to take the advantage here because the simplicity of application. Now, when we're talking about simplicity of application, if you're focusing on one thing versus 10, that I don't think you can even argue with that. When you just say, all right, my whole sole focus is to work on this one thing and move it forward, versus the 10X, which could be really powerful, but it's going to be a little bit more work to get in action. Do you have any counter that could win the simplicity of application?
No, I don't think there's any way to make 10 less than 1.
Well, one thing in the lead. However, I think it might be that pro might become a con right now, as we talk about the power when in action. The one thing obviously really helpful and powerful to focus on the most important thing and get it moved forward. It's much easier to get started, but 10 is obviously much more powerful than 1 when you've got it in action and it's working for you. So I think I just lost my own round. Well done, Manny. All right, now we're coming into the audience vote, and that's where you come in. We want to hear from you if you have read these books or if you want to weigh in on your favorite. Simply just add into the comments what you like about the book, why you think it should deserve the round, and we'll announce this at a later time for the results. So this is all about you, the audience. By the way, if you have questions in regards to these strategies, or if you're looking for more helpful information on setting goals, achieving those goals, planning and execution, that's what we're about at Growth Amplifiers. So we definitely want to hear from you. We want you to sign up to our mailing list. And we do have a Facebook community too that we'd like you to join as well. So really cool stuff. Right. I can't click on the thing that's not at the actual slide to progress it. So definitely visit us at growthamplifiers.com/live to connect with upcoming live sessions. We are looking for participants and guests to be in our shows, our forums, and in our upcoming events. So just a couple. Oh, the picture's not showing up yet. Let me see if it's there. It is not there. All right. Well, I'm just going to go into discussion mode. We do have a cool podcast coming up around the corner, and I just thought I'd bring that to the attention. But before we do that, Manny, what are your takeaways from today's session?
I think the takeaway is, really look at the ways that both of these books came together. Both of them talked about having a big vision of what you want to do. The strategies to get there are a little bit different, but I think we can both agree that if you have a big enough vision, a bold enough idea of where you want to go, that pathway will find itself and give you that passion to push it forward. So I like the alignment between both of those books having that same thought. But whether you go with one thing or 10x, make sure that you do it consistently and with passion.
Right. Get yourself a vision that you're excited about. Step back, take the time to diagnose and ideate, make a plan, and then take action and commit to moving it forward. That's how you can actually continually drive your vision into reality and amplify your business. If you have questions or an idea for an upcoming show or thought leader forum, we'd like to hear that in the comments. If you want to add and weigh in on this session as well, we'd love to hear that. Ask questions. We just love to hear the feedback from these sessions. It is great. Manny, any final thoughts you have before we wrap this one up?
Just to take action. So whether you want to 10x or one thing, grab a copy of one of these books, put it into action, and start following the principles laid out there by people that have taken those and had success with them.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your support, and we look to catch you on a future episode of Growth Amplifiers Live.